Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate real stories. Thank you for watching Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Tonight we have an exciting topic for you. We're going to talk about federal time, a person doing federal time and the disparity between the sentences imposed for crack sentences and powder sentences, at least the way it began. We have in the studio Mr. Troy Bounds, and this is part two for Mr. Bounds. He talked to us live about 3 weeks ago and told us his very, very interesting and heart-wrenching story about how, as a young man going to college, he got caught up and on his first offense got so much time. And it was when they were giving longer sentences for crack than for powder cocaine, even if the cocaine weighed the same amount. And sentences in federal court and state court are determined based on the weight of the drug, illegal drug that you get caught with. But for some reason, Congress in the 80s made a huge disparity between crack and powder. And so we're going to continue where we left off. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to call us at 713-807-1794. And we will begin the call-in at about 15 minutes in. So give us till about 6:45. And now, without any further ado, Troy is going to remind us about, tell us a little bit about his, the crime, the time, and then the disparity. And if we get a chance to, we're going to speak about the federal release program and how that differs from the parole system, and maybe even a few questions about how tough it is to do your time in federal prison. So, Troy, thank you for making the sacrifice to educate the Houston and Harris County community again about the federal, your experience in the federal criminal justice system.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ms. King, for having me. Just trying to review. I was 25 years old, and I grew up, in South Park, Houston. Relatively poor, but we didn't know it at the time. And long story short, I kind of got off into the drug game, drug trafficking mainly, and with a relative, and everything was going okay. And then some of the guys that we were selling to ended up migrating out of Houston to a little town called Victoria, Texas, 59 South. And long story short, Victoria got so hot that local law enforcement couldn't handle it, and so they called in the federal police, and that's how the case became federal. And long story short, they got busted, arrested, and the good old federal system allows people, when they get busted, to, well, if you just tell on somebody else, we'll make your sentence lighter. And long story short, that's what they did. And they told on us. We didn't get busted, if you will, no surveillance tapes, no illegal buys, I forget they call it undercover sting or something, like none of that. It was basically their testimony to a grand jury, and they indicted my uncle and I. And we didn't know any better, couldn't spell federal law, let alone, understand it. And so we thought that, how can you incarcerate me based on what somebody else is saying? They're saying what they're saying, but I'm saying the opposite. And so we felt that there was no way that we could be actually convicted. In state court, you can't do that necessarily. It's certainly not with hearsay alone, but in federal court, it's a different ballgame. So anyway, we went to trial and lost, of course. It was actually a 2.5-week trial, but we lost at trial, and we were sentenced. I was sentenced to 20 years, which is 235 months, actually 240, but I was sentenced to 235 months. My co-defendant was sentenced to 360 months, which is 20 years and 30 years roughly. And we started our Started our prison sentence, and of course we were
Talk
fighting.
about the weight of the cocaine. What was the weight of the cocaine that you were sentenced for?
We didn't have any physical cocaine. What they did, they took the informant's testimony of what they said we sold them, and they actually charged us. The initial drug amounts were 22 keys of crack cocaine. Through trial, our lead attorney cross-examined and did what he did, and the judge ended up throwing out 16 some odd kilograms. It left us with 4.68 kilograms. We were actually sentenced to 4.68 kilograms of crack cocaine, but there weren't any actual amounts. And again, according to the federal court sentenced you to the sentencing guidelines according to your drug amounts, nothing else. And 4.68 kilograms at that time, anything over 1.5 keys of crack starts you off at a base offense level of 38. And that was my base offense level, 38.
Months. Oh, just a level. Okay.
Base offense level 38,
right.
Which started at 235 months to 297 months. The judge gave me the low end since it was my first offense. And my uncle, the difference with him was he started off at a level 38, but he was also sentenced as a kingpin, which gave him a 4-point enhancement to a base offense level 42, which started him off at 360 months to life. And the judge gave him the low end since it was his first offense as well, and he was sentenced to 360 months, which is 30 years.
Now, let me ask you something. Was the guy who got busted in Victoria and testified against you, and we're calling him the informant, did he get any time?
Yes, ma'am. He received time, but through his testimony and cooperation, he received downward departures, Rule 35s, and different 5K1, different downward departure rules through the federal sentencing guidelines, and he probably ended up doing 2 to 3 years, something like that. He probably started off with 15 or 20 because he had been in and out of prison, and he ended up with probably 2 or 3 years due to his cooperating and testifying.
And what year did you get sentenced?
I was sentenced in '95, February 1995. We went to trial in October '94.
Okay, so you were 25 when you were sentenced, and it was in 1995. And the actual person you were selling to only got 2 or 3 years, where you stayed in prison how many years?
14 years.
Okay. And when you went to prison for 14 years, tell us about how much time would it have been if it was powder?
8 years.
It would have been 8 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, tell us what the interesting twist about the trial again. Now, remember this, viewers, he's not caught with any cocaine. So it's no cocaine to bring into the courtroom, which you can't do in state court. You have to be, I mean, you can do it, kind of, but I mean, somebody has to have some cocaine. It needs to either be bought by somebody or sold from somebody. So it has to be some cocaine that a chemist can measure to actually say it's cocaine. There are some slippery conspiracy laws in state court, but it's just not used very much. What's interesting here is that basically some people got caught and they said, we got it from these guys in Houston. And it's basically all hearsay. And I mean, that's weird. I mean, it is weird. And so I understand why they want to go to trial, because you have to be convicted of a certain date, doing a certain act, or a certain time period doing a certain act. And as far as Troy Bounds was concerned and his uncle, I mean, these guys could have been buying from 5 different sources. It's real normal in the drug game for people to buy from different sources, whoever they can get it from. So who knows? I mean, the day they got caught, they could have actually bought it from somebody else. So that's what's even more interesting to me as a criminal defense lawyer.
Yes, ma'am.
Because they might have been afraid to say who they got it from and used a remote person that they'd gotten it from like 2 or 3 months before, but not this actual transaction because it was too traceable back to the people they really got it from. So they kind of lied, but then they got caught up, I guess.
Yes, ma'am.
So you end up getting 14 years. The person who had a bad record, who got caught with the drugs, ends up getting 2 or 3 years. How unfair is that? What do you think about that, Renita, just being a person from the outside looking in?
I mean, it's definitely unfair. It's just the unfair, I guess, ways of the criminal justice system. I do think it's rather odd that you didn't have any evidence, or they didn't have any evidence on you to bring to the courthouse. So, and I know that you have to be proven beyond a reasonable, or your case has to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt in order for you to receive some type of punishment. And I just don't feel like that was
Yeah, it's
satisfactory.
difficult. It's difficult because we, particularly urban people, minority people, we hear the proof beyond a reasonable doubt, and we take that very, very seriously. But unfortunately, a lot of times the jurors don't take it that seriously if the defendant is a minority, such as yourself. They'll take it seriously if the defendant is not, say, Mr. Zimmerman. They take it real seriously then. But if it's a minority person, they don't take that proof beyond a reasonable doubt so seriously. And basically, when I go to court, I always feel like my client is guilty until proven innocent. So I go into it with a different frame. I go into it with the frame of mind that I think most jurors have, because I've talked to so many jurors after trials. And they basically think as long as somebody says they did it, they did it. It's not, they're not like evaluating their credibility. They're not thinking of, why is this person's motivation to lie? You know, like, they're not thinking about what I said just a few minutes ago. These people could have gotten busted and said it was someone, and it could have been the wrong people. So another thing I thought was interesting about Troy's trial is that what he and his uncle did sell to these guys when they sold to them was powder, only in the form of powder, never crack. And the testimony should have been about that. So did the informant say that you sold him powder?
Yes, ma'am. They told the truth. The prosecution took their testimony because we went to trial. They wanted to give us as much time as they could.
So they wanted to punish you for exercising your constitutional right to a trial.
Okay. And they, when the informants would say, the defense attorney would ask them, what form was the cocaine when you purchased it from them? And they would say it was powder. And they would always come back and say, well, did they know what you were doing with it after you bought it from them? Did they know you were converting it to crack? And they would say yes. But again, according to the sentencing guidelines, it's not enough that we know that they're turning it to crack. It has to be a part of our agreement that it be turned to crack. Now, prior to, I think it's like 1987, once upon a time, in order to sentence one defendant for the actions of his co-defendant, you only had to prove one thing according to the sentencing guidelines, and that was scope of agreement. They amended the sentencing guidelines to say not only do you have to prove scope of agreement, but you also have to prove reasonable foreseeability. And at the time that we got sentenced, it was both, and they only proved, they didn't really prove that we knew, but they said that they proved that we knew what they were doing with the powder cocaine.
And let me stop here. What's interesting about this to viewers is that this is the part that I differ with the federal government in the prosecution of people. The prosecutors definitely had to tell the buyers what to say.
Yes.
The buyers would not have on their own, just in the street, I mean, not trying to protect anybody. They would have just said, we bought it from them, and we did what we wanted to do with it. Because they might not have turned all of it into crack. They might have been snorting some of it themselves. They might have also been, you know, divvying up and selling some of it to their clients who like powder and some of it to their clients that like crack. But that's where I disagree with the federal government and the prosecutors and the power that they have, because then now they can say, well, we want you to say this. And those guys have to say that to get the time, because they know they're either going to get 20 years or 30 years if they're sentenced properly, or they're going to get 2 or 3 if they testify dishonestly under oath because the government has told them to, because this is what we want to get them. And that's the part I disagree. Just let the facts fall like they're going to fall. If the guys are going to sell themselves, to sell their soul, and cooperate with the government, everybody's doing wrong, so be it. That's the risk you took.
Yes,
okay?
yes.
They could let them do it.
Yes.
But the part, I mean, you know, you took that risk, the buyers told it on you, your ass is grass, basically. They got you. But, but to make them lie about it and to extrapolate it into something just so they can say, ooh, judge, now see, when it comes to sentencing, because in federal court, the judges do the sentencing, not the jury. So the judge, then they can say, oh, no, but we proved it was crack. We proved it was crack. Remember, the buyers always said they knew it. And see, the inference is when they say that they have the buyer testify that they knew it was going to be turned into crack, the inference is that it was foreseeable, and y'all talked about it. So there's like an implied indirect agreement, because if I tell you, ooh, I'm buying this powder and I'm going to turn it into crack and I'm going to have all this conversation, and you acquiesce to that, When in actuality in the street, you just want to sell it. Whoever has the money to buy it, that's who you want to sell it to. You don't care what they do with it. And certainly you don't have any foreseeability or concern. It's just like if I buy a dress, I might buy an evening gown that goes to the ground, but I might in my mind think it's cuter as a short dress and cut it up. You know, I mean,
Right.
does the seller care?
Right.
As long as they got their $300 for the dress, that's all
right.
they care about. They're not foreseeing what I'm going to do with it. They don't even know if I'm going to wear it. I mean, I'm such a shoe fanatic. I've bought shoes and never worn them and have them on my coffee table like furniture, like decoration, and I never meant to wear them. So, I mean, the foreseeability would be that I was going to wear them, right? I have shoes that I am never going to wear because I just like the way they look.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just saying, so that's what's so crazy about it is that nobody knows what somebody's going to do with something.
Even giving them the fact, let's say we did know, the guidelines say it has to be a part of, within the scope of our agreement. In other words, the law acknowledges the fact that you have a buyer-seller relationship, which is what you just described. So if that's the extent of our relationship, then that's not scope of agreement. The law was there. There was a case, U.S. versus Chisholm, the picturesque case out of the Fifth Circuit, and they established that you have to prove both, but they didn't want to hear that. And this is how I know that the system is biased and prejudiced against the young so-called African-American male, because there's no other law, there's no other crime, there's no other part of law where they do stuff like this. You can't find it, you can't name it. And so I sold drugs, I deserve to be punished. I deserve to be sentenced to what I did. But don't sentence me to what somebody else did.
Or what the government wants to say you did because they know in the guidelines you're going to get a harsher sentence.
Yes.
Let's take a call. Caller, thank you for calling Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Please turn your volume off and just talk into the telephone, please.
Very good. Hello.
Hello.
Yes, I have a question. Apparently, you are discussing court etiquette to some extent, correct?
No, I'm not. I'm talking about the disparity with crack and powder and Troy Bound's federal sentence.
Oh, well, of course, that is an old issue, and in my view, it has to do, of course, with the fact that we somehow live in society where people are categorized in terms of their drug use by their race. And I'm sure you know what I'm talking about. Of course, there have been some movements to try to get that changed. And I'm sorry I just turned into your program. I listened before, and I apologize. But what do you see as the route, the direction that thinking people and enlightened people need to do or to take to get to the point of where we don't have such a disparity between wealthier white people that do powder cocaine and marginalized inner city people that do cocaine but in crack form?
Since Mr. Bounds did 14 years for that, I'll let him answer.
Thank you.
Well, to me, the people that it affects the most are the people that need to get involved, because if it doesn't affect you, I guess the reality is that you know you're not going to be interested in it. We've been fighting this fight for 20 years now, and although I will acknowledge that the courts have they've lightened up, they've made a few amendments here. They're still working on it, but while they're working on it, people are serving time. People's lives are like I did 14 years and really only should have done 2 or 3. You know what I mean? So, and I actually was released. I actually was released on an amendment to the sentencing guidelines where they were trying to, I guess, make amends, if you will, and reduce the sentences to a degree.
And what he's talking about is Congress actually at some point did make a change recently in the last 10 years to try to correct. Actually, it was when Obama first got there. It's actually, I think it was in January 09, that they actually made whatever the weight is for whether it's crack or powder be the same sentence, basically. They did an amendment. But you've done almost all of your time.
Follow-up question, if I may.
Certainly.
Well, as you know, our current, kind of localize it and bring it down to the level of Harris County. As you know, our current district attorney basically rescinded many of the operational operational aspects of crack cocaine that our previous district attorney refused to take to the grand jury certain amounts,
Certainly.
residue amounts.
I'll explain that. Go ahead with your question. I'll explain that. But yes, I agree. What's your question?
My question is, our current district attorney has reinstated these draconian measures, which are resulting in many people that I work with in my community being incarcerated, as opposed to the previous district attorney, which of course I have a lot of problems with because she broke the law, and I consider her a criminal. But the point is, what can we do locally about, other than wait for this current district attorney to retire or to leave office due to the fact that he, of course, is battling cancer? And then, of course, we don't know who's going to replace that person. But is there anything we can do locally, or does, in fact, the district attorney have great discretion on how to prosecute and persecute persons that are, for example, in possession of small amounts of crack cocaine or pipes with residue?
Okay, I'm going to hang up, and I appreciate your call, and I'm going to address that. Okay, sir, and thank you for calling, and call back if you want. What the caller is bringing to our attention is that under Pat Lycos, the 4 years she was the DA, she decided to stop accepting charges for crack pipes and residue amount of cocaine because it was clogging up our system. It was taking police officers off the street. It was, and basically, you can do state jail time or even prison for that, but usually you just give them county time, like 30 days, 90 days, because it's like trash. It's like an empty Coke can that might have some residue of Coke in it. A crack pipe that has residue in it can't be used for anything. It's not a measurable quantity. They have to keep the pipe in case they get some more real crack to smoke with it. So it's just trash, basically. It's just something they're using. It's like paraphernalia. And there is a Class C, which is a traffic ticket paraphernalia. The district attorney has all of this discretion because the district attorney, whenever a police officer arrests you, they can hold you 3 days under the law, 72 hours, without charges. But the district attorney's office has to accept charges on you. So say, for example, if I'm a DA, I'm working the police desk, Troy gets arrested at 3 in the morning. They take, for whatever reason, they find crack in his car. They take him downtown. They have to call, the cop has to call the DA's office and tell him the probable cause, why they stopped him. I stopped him for speeding. I stopped him. The car smelled like marijuana when I was going to write him a speeding ticket. So that gave me probable cause to search his car, and I found a crack pipe underneath in his console. So I've arrested him. And the DA's office will either say, yes, we'll accept charges, or no, release him, or we'll accept, or just charge him with a Class C paraphernalia. Under Pat Lycos, when that kind of call came in, she told her people, we're not accepting those kind of charges anymore. We're just not going to accept it. It's trash. We're not going to accept it. And so that lightened the load in the courthouse tremendously, because a lot of the statistics the police officers have are for running in those low-level, and they're mostly homeless people, really. Homeless people, the people that beg on the streets, a lot of times they have crack pipes on them. A lot of just, low-budget people will keep those crack pipes on them. People that can't leave them at their house when they get some more crack to smoke it at home. They're out in the public. But it's a lot of those cases. One of the things I was told that Mike Anderson campaigned on was, I will start accepting charges on those again, to our conservative brethren who are afraid of anything that has to do with crime. And because, the majority of people don't use crack, it just sounds like that's a good thing to do. Not understanding how it clogs up the system, and it means nothing. And as soon as they get the charges, everybody's trying to hurry up and get them out of the system so we can make room for people who are robbing and stealing and raping and human trafficking, and who have large quantities of cocaine, or even have a usable quantity of cocaine. We're trying to make room for them because society can't afford to house everybody. So that's the decision that he made. As citizens, what we can do is make a joyful noise and call and say, I disagree with you, Mike Anderson. I disagree with this policy. We can have rallies. We tell our district attorney what to do. Unfortunately, in Harris County, we don't. We don't tell him what to do. Other counties do. I'm from San Antonio, Bexar County. They switch DAs every 4 to 8 years because of policy changes. But here, people will just rubber stamp whoever the district attorney is. I respect Mike Anderson. I think he's a nice person. individually. I think it's bad policy, though, because I'm an accountant, ex-accountant, and banker, and I don't think it makes good money sense. I think we're spending our dollars wrong when we concentrate on low-level street people running them in. I just don't think it makes sense. So that's just me. I think it's bad economics for us. But anyway, let's. Do you have an opinion about that?
Not really. I think, since I'm from the streets, I'll just speak on it from the street perspective. I think when you focus on for example, in the hood, the police target certain people, right? And so if I'm on the streets, and let's say the police, we used to call them the jump out boys. The jump out boys pull up on a corner. People throw crack, throw drugs everywhere, and whoever they catch, they're going to charge that person with whatever drugs they find.
Closest to them.
Yes, ma'am.
Not necessarily that they saw him throw it.
That's right.
But they'll come to court and swear they saw Troy throw that right by his foot, and they saw Renita throw that by her foot. But when in actuality, like you said, everybody just starts throwing things.
Yes.
And they don't know who threw what.
Yes, and so now, like you say, I go downtown, and if they decide to indict me or charge me for whatever they found, now I got to prove that that wasn't mine. You can't, hey, everybody threw whatever. I was just there, you know what I mean?
Right.
And again, like you said, it clogs the system to a degree that we're locking up people that don't need to be locked up, and now these people that need to be locked up, there's no room, you know what I mean?
The robbers and the ones with the guns, there's no room for them.
Right.
But people on the street, all those people under the bridge have crack pipes, okay? Yeah, that's what a society needs to understand. They might say hungry, but they are substance abusers. It's either it's alcohol. It's just the bottom line. And there's a place for them. And I sympathize with them. I go to a homeless church, as you know, St. John's downtown, United Methodist, where we feed the hungry and our money goes there. But they are substance abusers, and there are places for them, but they don't follow the rules because they don't want to be in at a certain time, and they don't want to not have cocaine or crack or alcohol on them. They want to have weapons on them, and these shelters are not going to take them unless they follow the rules. So be real clear about that. So when the police are running the statistics up, those are the people they're running in. That and just street people on the street gambling late at night, people that just have things. A lot of times it's not their dope, and that's why they go to trial. But they'll get out of jail faster by just pleading guilty to something that's not theirs than to go to trial, because it takes a year to go to trial, and we're just going to give them county time, which is designed for misdemeanors. Let's take another quick call. Caller, you're on.
Hello there, Miss Vivian King.
Hey, how are you?
All right, Delta Sigma Theta, 100 years strong.
I know it. I just got back from D.C. I just got back. I mean, like, right before I got on the air. So thank you.
Y'all have a lot of fun?
We did. We had 50,000 Deltas there. They tell us that we brought $78 million to the D.C. economy.
Okay, I had a cousin. She was there. She lives in Dallas. She was there too. She's a Delta Sigma Theta.
50,000 there, but about 200,000 came to the city because people came from everywhere.
Are you a member too?
Who, Renita?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes, I am.
Oh, okay. That's all right. Well, how you doing, Troy?
All right, how you doing, sir?
All right. Look, I want to ask. I got two questions. I want to ask Troy a question. I want to ask Miss King a question. I assume those informers, I guess they're on the witness protection plan. I guess they life probably not be the same.
No comment.
Okay. Miss King, this is maybe a little off topic, but I was wondering about everybody talking about the Trayvon Martin case. Why was there only just 6 jurors on the I've never seen that before. Why was there only 6 jurors instead of 12?
That's Florida law. My feelings are so hurt I can't talk about that case right now. We're going to do a show on that either next week or week after next, after the emotions cool down. But I can't speak about that right now. If you can respect my.
Oh yeah.
I have to. I'm in mourning.
Okay. Yeah. Me too. Okay. Then I'm gonna hang up. Now I'm not gonna take too much of your time because I know you may have other callers want to. And I want to hear the rest of Troy's story.
All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
All right, so we were talking about your base level of 38, I believe. Oh, no, you were telling us about U.S. versus Chisholm. That's what you were telling us.
Yes, that was like a landmark case dealing with the two prongs of how you can hold one defendant accountable for another defendant's actions. And I filed motion after motion after motion after motion. They never one time addressed it because they couldn't address it legally and deny it, so they just never addressed it. And so, anyway, thank God that they ended up amending the sentencing guidelines to.
Let me just say this: if you just tuned in, Troy was convicted in a trial for conspiracy to deliver, I think, 22 kilos of cocaine originally. He went to trial because he'd never been in trouble. He was a college student. He was selling drugs with his uncle and to a guy who took the drugs to Victoria and did whatever they wanted to do. The guys who bought it and lived in Victoria got busted, told them that they were getting it in Houston from Troy and his uncle, which gave him federal jurisdiction because Victoria couldn't handle this big conspiracy. They testified against Troy. They said, and his uncle. Troy didn't believe that with no drugs, how can you convict us? And how do we know that those are the drugs we sold you just because they're saying that? Because most buyers buy from different suppliers. And they didn't believe they could get time for hearsay. Basically, they went to trial with no drugs being presented to a jury, saying that they sold to them, saying that Troy knew that when they sold to them, this powder was going to be converted into crack cocaine. And back then, in '94, the disparity between the same weight of crack and powder was huge. So if it was the same weight was powder, he would have gotten 8 years. But because it was proven beyond a reasonable doubt to be crack, according to the way we do things, he got more like 20 years, and his uncle got 30 years for hearsay. I say that because, the standard's real low for proof beyond a reasonable doubt when it comes to somebody that looks like Troy. So that's where we are, and we're talking about it. The judge did reduce it from 22 kilos to 4.68 kilos in that their lawyers had proven that the other 16 kilos didn't exist. So he was talking about his the foreseeability issue. They had to prove, and tell us what they had to prove again, Troy.
They had to prove, first of all, that we knew that the guys that bought the powder cocaine from us were converting it to crack. But then what they didn't prove and should have proven by law was that it was a part of our agreement that they converted to crack.
Because that's what a real conspiracy is. It's an agreement to do all the acts that are consistent with this scheme. It's kind of like for gangs and for the mafia and for racketeering. That's what conspiracy is supposed to be about, because, in a conspiracy, say like when we think of the mafia, I could be the kingpin. I could be telling you to go sell heroin. I could tell you to go buy heroin. I can tell someone else to go kill someone who didn't pay us for our heroin. So they want to charge everybody with a like mind. We're all in this agreement, and we might not all know each other, but we're all in agreement to put drugs into the community. So that's kind of like the big agreement, and everybody plays a little role in this whole agreement that we have. The murderer might not have sold, the hitman might not have sold the cocaine, but he's a part of keeping the business alive with the cocaine and the heroin. So that's kind of what the basis of kind of what conspiracy is supposed to be about. But in modern times, it's changed into something totally different. And one of the things that Troy feels is that he should have been punished for what he did, but he should not have been punished for something that he didn't do, and that is he and his uncle had no idea what these guys were doing it for. And basically, we are complaining about the government being able to write the script for the snitch or the informant. Let them just tell the truth about what they did and what the people that they participated with did, and convict them for what they did. Because in the streets, the buyers are not saying, we're going to have an agreement that this is the only thing we're going to do with this cocaine we get from you. Because I'm sure in actuality, they were selling it as powder to the people who preferred powder. They were cracking it up to make it go longer for those people who they could give crack to. So they basically lied under oath so that the government could get a higher sentence. And that's what we want to bring to the, the media and bring to the people's knowledge. And in federal court, the jurors have nothing to do with sentencing. So it's real important, if you're a federal juror, to listen to the facts, try to understand why you think the person's going to trial. Because remember, in federal court, very few people go to trial. It might be 1% of all the people that are tried. So if they go to trial, it's because there are some real issues that need to be decided. Somebody's lying, okay? And yes, a lot of times it is the government lying, and it's us as jurors and citizens saying it's okay to lie to us.
Yes,
basically.
ma'am. The system is so warped, and I've witnessed this, Ms. King. In prison, I've seen guys who have already agreed to cooperate with the government. I've seen them find other guys that don't know the person. Let's say they want Nino Brown.
Okay.
We want Nino Brown, and I've agreed to snitch on Nino Brown.
Okay.
Well, I get in prison, and I meet G Money, and I like G Money, but G Money got 20 years. I can tell G Money what I know about Nino Brown, and I can call my prosecutor, tell him, like, I got another guy in prison with me. He's going to agree to testify against Nino Brown as well. And she'll give him a 5K1, Rule 35, downward departure or whatever. He don't even know Nino Brown, but he's going to take the information. I can show him pictures of Nino Brown. I can tell him how me and Nino Brown used to get down. And he can become an informant witness against Nino Brown. And the federal judicial system will allow this man and anybody else I can conjure up to get to go in, because they want Nino Brown. They don't care what they have to do to get him, even breaking the law. And I've seen guys walk around the track in prison and just tell stories and get, we used to call them tour buses. They'll get a group of guys and they'll actually leave prison, go to court to testify against people they don't even know, just to get their sentences reduced. That's how desperate the system has become. But I'm not mad at the snitches. I'm mad at the system for allowing this type. That's a travesty to justice.
That's a travesty for somebody to testify against someone. So, I mean, as citizens, be real wary of a snitch's testimony, that jailhouse testimony. It's not reliable. They might not know it all, but they're trying to work their sentences down. Remember, when you go to trial, you'll never know what they're ultimately going to get. That's part of the game the government plays, because they have to keep that over the snitch's head until it's over. So you, as a juror, will never know. All you know is that they've sold their soul, but you don't know if their soul actually knows the facts or not, because the government wants to write that script till it's over. Until they get Nino Brown, and Nino Brown's been sentenced to life in prison, that's when that snitch is going to get his reduction after that. So no, while the snitch is testifying, it can't come out. The lawyer can't, for Nino Brown, can't cross-examine that snitch and say, so you're getting a deal. You're doing 20 years right now in prison. You know, the snitch has to say yes. But when this is over, if you testify and say what the prosecutor wants you to say, then you might only serve 2 years, 2 more years instead of the next 18 years. That part, he'll say, well, I don't know. I'm just doing this because it's the truth. Because that's what they've been told to say. And they actually don't know what they're going to get. And they leave that part so that they can testify before the jury and look like it's telling the truth. But in actuality, they could be totally lying.
Yes, and I think,
and it's cold, too. That's cold.
Yes, ma'am. And another travesty is, and people need to get involved. You know, everybody's angry about the most recent decision, but the best way to get back at it, I know everybody that I know, when we get the summon to be a juror, we try our best to get out of it. But then we're angry when this type of ruling happens. But I heard every juror that was pooled in my case say, I know he did something or the government wouldn't have him here.
Right.
Every one of them said it, so much so that the judge, because they're supposed to be struck, but the judge said, well, I'll strike, we'll be here for weeks. I can't strike everybody. And so...
And what he's talking about is not the 12 that listened to his case. He's talking about the 60 that came over. So those we call the Venire panel, V-E-N-I-R-E panel, P-A-N-E-L. So we have to pick from this pool, but what we really do as lawyers is we strike the people who say things that don't sound like they can be fair.
Right.
So what he's saying is during the jury selection process, when they were asked about things, do you think he's guilty just because he's here? Those 60 people, they were just raising their hands and saying, well, he must have done something or else he wouldn't be here. So that's already showing a bias, and they're supposed to be stricken as a matter of law if people already have a bias that he must have done something wrong. So that means the threshold for the government to prove beyond a reasonable doubt is real low, because I already think he's guilty and I don't even know what the hell he's done.
Yes.
Because on voir dire, you can't even talk about the facts of the case. So when you're doing the jury selection process with the 60, you have to make hypothetical exams. You can talk about the law that's going to apply in the case, but you can't talk about any of the facts. So when lawyers are giving you hypotheticals, that's not what happened. You're just trying to do something extreme on the prosecution side or extreme on the defense side to see if the Venire panel can be open-minded enough to wait and listen before they make a decision. Let's take a call. Caller, you're on. Thank you for calling.
Yes, yes, Ms. King. I was calling in because I know Troy and I know his story, and I just wanted to say that you also have to remember that the way the system is set up, what they'll do is when you go to trial, they'll label you as a kingpin, and so they make you look bad. Now, I also know that Troy, he was young. He was like, 23. He had a nice house. He had a BMW. And see, they present all that to the jury.
Exactly. And that
Right.
prejudices the jury. Yep.
Exactly, and they label you as a kingpin. I do know that him and his uncle had their own business, pest control business, but at the time, it wasn't that big. But I just want to say that you got to remember that the system is not going to be fair. I know you can't talk about the Trayvon Martin case, but it just all boils down to it's not fair. I mean, it's like a black against white thing.
Right. We're going to talk about it. We're just not going to talk about it today. We're going to cool off first. But we're going to talk
Okay.
about it. So don't forget to watch. We're going to talk about it in about a week or two. I don't know if we're going to do it next Wednesday. I have a show planned for next Wednesday. And if it's hot enough, we might go ahead and talk about it next week. But I'm planning to do it in 2 weeks after we cool down.
Right, and then see another thing you got to remember too. When they get you in that system and they get that conviction on your back, you can't vote until you're off parole. You can't get your apartment, and then you got the accident back to find you a job as well.
But see, but the thing that we can
that's why they do all that.
But let me tell you, let me tell you this. One of the reasons why I do this show is we as citizens can change that. We make the law like that. We agree that we're so afraid of everybody that does wrong that we want them not to live in our apartments. We can change that. That can be changed.
Right.
That can be changed by people like you. Instead of us, like Troy said, we need to go to jury duty. We need to say that we can be fair and impartial. It's our civic duty to go to jury duty, and we can be fair and impartial. What if Zimmerman had no black jurors because all the black people threw their summons away that day? We're all pissed off because nobody black was on the jury. Maybe everybody threw their summons away, like they do in Harris County. Don't come.
Right.
And so,
Right.
so we're going to be mad, but then we haven't done our part? Okay. Thank you for calling. We have about 15 minutes left. Let's talk about supervised release.
Yes, ma'am. What supervised release is and what makes it different from state court, in state court, let's say you get 20 years and you serve 14 like I did, but when you're released, you're on parole for 6 years, the remainder of your sentence. Well, in federal court, you get a sentence and you get supervision upon your release. That's actually a part of your sentence. So technically, I got a 20-year sentence added with 5 years supervised release. So even though I was released like 3.5 years before my release date, I still got to do 5 years supervised release because that's a part of my sentence. And the reduction didn't eat the 5 years up. And so it's a part of your sentence. And when you do appeals and when I got my reduction, had my reduction been more than the 3.5 years I have remaining, I could have had I could have put it toward my supervised release, but it wasn't. So when I got out of prison, I still had to serve 5 years supervised release, of which I'll be finished next month. But I had to do all 5 of those years,
Wow.
under supervision, which is not a problem because I'm determined to do the right thing. But everybody doesn't have that attitude, but it's.
Isn't that great? Troy went in at 45. He's 44. He's worked for 5 years in solid waste, picking up trash, driving the truck, and proud of it. Ain't that right, Troy?
Yes, ma'am.
He works hard, and he's will be off next month, and I commend you for that. I want to let Renita get a little bit in. She did a little research on Troy when he was in federal prison in the 7 different locations that he went to and found something. Renita, what did you find on Troy?
I found a little, I guess, a letter that he wrote to, a letter, was it correct? To the November Coalition. Can you tell us exactly what that is?
Well, the November Coalition was one of many groups at that time. The racial disparity was a big political issue at the time, the disparity between powder and crack cocaine sentences. And that was just one group that I wrote many people. I wrote Bill Clinton, I wrote Sheila Jackson Lee, I wrote everybody I could. And that was just one that I wrote. I was trying to get help because, again, I accepted my wrong. I accepted being in prison, but I never accepted the 20-year sentence that I received, 12 of which was for something that I didn't do. And I was just reaching out to anybody that would listen to try to just get justice to my cause, because I never sold a rock of crack cocaine in my life. And so to receive 12 additional years for something that I did not do, I just felt that somebody hopefully would listen. And that was one of the many letters that I wrote. I wrote another letter to the White House, and I surprisingly got a response. it was to no avail. But they did respond. They didn't have to do that.
Who was the president then?
Bill Clinton was the president. I actually received a response from his office. I wrote.
What did it say?
In so many
I can't
words.
help you?
No, in so many words, they were like, basically, get with your Congress people, you know.
What you'd already done. And
Right.
They didn't even respond.
Right, exactly.
And that is the only thing the president can do is tell you to get with your Congress people because
Right.
they write the laws. The Congress wrote the law that you were incarcerated under.
I wrote everybody. I wrote Bill Cosby, every Bill I could, you know. I wrote everybody that I could. But I was just trying to find somebody to address
The disparity.
the injustice of my particular case.
And I know on the previous show you said that you wrote a letter to the Fifth Circuit, right? Or to a judge in the Fifth Circuit?
Yes, I wrote the judges. Again, everybody. I filing every motion I could. I was just doing. I never laid down. And the reason we were talking off camera about recidivism, and I brought up a word, institutionalized. When you tell people that you've served 14 years in prison, one of the things they ask you is, well, you don't seem like it. And I know people who did that kind of time, and they were institutionalized. And one of the ways that I was blessed not to become institutionalized, I never accepted my sentence.
So let's take a quick call. Caller, turn your volume down and talk directly into the receiver. You're on.
Hello, how are you?
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for coming in from your convention. I'm just so happy to see you on the air. And I did have a question that I wanted to see if you could weigh in on. I wanted to see if you could weigh in on the issue of people under community supervision that are reincarcerated because of technical violations related to employment. Here in Harris County, there's so much unemployment, and I can only imagine discrimination of unemployment for persons that have been incarcerated. Could you discuss that issue?
Now, let me make sure I understand the question. They're on community supervision, and they have a technical violation, like what? Not getting a job, and that gets that gets their probation violated.
Right, like not having a job or not having stable residence because they don't have a job. They have fees that they have to pay, and if they cannot pay those fees, you know, that's another.
Yeah, it is very complicated, and we need to do a whole show on community supervision. So viewers, when she says community supervision, that means they're on probation. So they got a sentence, but it was probated, so they didn't go to prison, okay? So society's thought on community supervision, that's why they call it that instead of probation. So you're supposed to be supervised by the community, but your probation officer is going to make you pay fees. You have to do community service. You have to get a GED, ESL, English as a second language, if that applies. Take a bunch of classes, get a job, have suitable employment, and under the law as it's been for most of the time, you cannot, in the United States, you can't put people in prison for not paying fees, for money. I mean, that's why in civil court you get a judgment, it goes against your credit, but you can't go to jail for it. We don't do that in the United States. So if you don't pay the fees, you can't go to jail. That's the simple answer. But you have to do everything else. So you still have to show up every month, but you just can't pay. You still have to do your community service. You're still supposed to do all the things that you're told to do, but if you don't pay money under the law, you don't get violated for that. Unfortunately, most people, if they can't pay, they stop showing up. They do other technical violations along with the money being listed. It appears that that's why they got violated, but technically you cannot be violated for not paying money. It has to be something else. But it is difficult with housing, but that's our fault as a society because, like I said, we should require apartments and places to let people have second chances. Even if we have to have some type of government housing that gives people second chances, that's something society can address. We can address helping people and giving them, just like we address putting them in prison, we can address helping them when we get out. But someone has to take up that cause, and because it affects minorities more, the majority is not going to take that cause up. We got to take that cause up. And that's why I share the information with you and pay to do this. We got to take that cause up.
And I have one last question, and it relates to the background checks. People go, a lot of times they say they'll take probation or deferred adjudication because they don't want it to come up on their or they're in a situation where they've done their time, and even though they've done their time, or they're on probation, or they're on deferred adjudication, it still comes up on their background check. And these people are discriminated against in being employed.
You are absolutely right. And lawyers, about 50% of them will lie to you and say, oh, just take deferred adjudication. It won't be on your record. I have begged lawyers to stop saying that because it's a lie. Everything's on your record. Everything, every time you go to court, say like if Troy has a year before he goes to trial, every time he goes to court, that additional court setting is added to his record. It's down at the district clerk's office, which is designed to be public record. The district clerk is the keeper of the records, okay? At any district clerk. So you can see what someone's doing. So that's a lie. It's on your record. But, again, caller, we can change that. You can have someone after they do probation, the law can be written to that the record must be expunged. It must be deleted after they've served their community. But that's not the way the law has been written. It's been written to stay there forever so that it can be used against you to enhance future punishment. You know how one strike against you, two strike against you. But our state legislators write it that way. So we can change that. What I tell young people all the time is you now go and become the legislators. Run against the people who've been in these offices for 50 years because they still have draconian laws 50 years ago. These kids get arrested every day for marijuana and they say, I'm not even smoking it. It doesn't smell like marijuana. The cops are lying. Well, change the law. Make marijuana a Class C misdemeanor. Well, they have to just get a ticket. I mean, the law can be changed. I mean, so it's up to us to put pressure on our legislators or become the legislators to change the law to something that makes more sense because it doesn't make enough sense.
Well, next year and every 2 years, people have to understand they can't just vote when it's time for president. If they're interested in changing the laws, they've got to vote when the legislators run, which is every 2 years, and the judicial elections as well, because the president cannot change the laws that are the state laws. And,
or the federal laws.
I appreciate you being on the air to shed light on these issues.
Thank you. Thank you for calling. Yeah, and the president didn't change the federal laws either. That's just our lack of knowledge. He's the leader, and there's certain things he can do, but Congress is the one who writes the laws. The Senate confirms it, and then if it makes it that far, then the president signs it. But let's keep informed. Like this year is city council. Our city council and our mayor run alone. There's no state officials running with them. And when they run, it's nonpartisan. So you don't know if they're Democrats or Republicans. But one thing we can do is make sure that the mayor appoints the police chief, and he sets the policy for the police officers. There can be a police chief that they emphasize, stop lying on these kids. Arrest them for what they do, but stop lying. They can make sure that just like white kids get tickets, Hispanic kids get tickets, black kids get tickets, you search all of their cars. Don't just search the black kids' cars when you stop to give them a ticket. Don't just lie on them and say their cars smell like marijuana, so that you can search their car first. If you find marijuana, then you write a report and say it smelled like it. You back into it. And there's no marijuana even in the car, other than a baggie somewhere in the trunk that obviously doesn't smell like burnt marijuana because there's no swishers in there. One of the things I did when I was out of town is I talked to some lawyers that were Deltas at the convention that, or in other states, and they won't even let them use that as probable cause unless they actually find a roach in the car. But here, we don't require that. Our police chief is appointed by the mayor. When we go to these mayor forums, you can start talking about these issues and this disparity. When police officers in black neighborhoods do cavity searches and go up people's anuses on the street or take them in, they don't do that in the white neighborhoods. We can demand that our mayor has a police chief that makes sure it's fair and change that culture. We don't ask those questions to our mayors. Who are you going to appoint, and to make sure the police chief is fair? And we don't ask that of our city council people. You can start asking that question that's affecting your children and the probable cause. Because I promise you, I don't know this statistically, I'm just telling you this colloquially, 75% of the people in jail and in prison came from a traffic stop, and a lot of times they were illegally searched. Let's take a quick phone call, and then we'll be wrapping it up. Think of your closing statements, because we got about 3 minutes. No call. Okay. Well, Troy, thank you for coming on. Our hour goes by really quickly.
Yes. Yeah, thank you.
So tell us what you want people listening to know about the system and the ability to overcome.
I think just in one statement, we need to get involved. We can't wait until a high-profile case to go march and do things. It's the every day is when it really matters. It's not one big day. And then also, I just want to tell people who either have relatives or if you yourself have been in trouble, don't allow the system to get you down. We fight for what we want. And if you really want to get out and stay out, you can. Yes, it's hard. Yes, I can't get an apartment. Yes, I'm having trouble finding jobs. I work at a job that not everybody wants to do. And I thank God for it. You know what I mean? I don't want to be here forever, but it was a start for me. It was a stepping stone for me, and I'm doing pretty good for myself. But I was determined, not taking no for an answer, And I think that people just need to, we got to fight. We come from a heritage of fighting. We are where we are today because people fought. And we need to fight. We have children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews. And I just think, we need to fight for what we want. And we can make this, with all of her flaws, it's still the best country in the world. And if we just need to fight a little harder,
What do you say, Renita?
I concur with the both of you as in regards to voting, and especially my generation, because now it's our time to take the torch. So I think that we definitely need to become more involved, and we also need to become more knowledgeable about, the everyday life. These type of things happen every day. Not even trying to harp on the Trayvon Martin issue, but I'm sure there was some African American or some Hispanic boy that was shot, and he, it wasn't right, and it didn't, there was injustice or whatever the case may be. So I think definitely people need to speak, because at the end of the day, your vote is your voice. And once people realize that, then that's when change can really start to happen. But people can talk about, oh, this isn't right, and when voting comes, or when voting season comes, no one can find their card. Oh, it's too far. I don't feel like going. Or, people need to stop making excuses.
Well, I agree and concur with the two of you. Like you said, Troy, get involved. And like you said, Renita, we need to stop making excuses. We need to be proactive, not reactive. One of the reasons why I didn't watch TV on Trayvon, I don't know what happened, is because I already could write that script. And because I've been involved. It takes stress and strain. People, know that I fight, and they don't like that downtown at the courthouse. Because I'm putting my money where my mouth is. I'm here. I'm talking about it. People don't want to do that. I am not reacting. I'm proactive. I'm telling you what's going on. And let's say we want a safer community, but we want a fair justice system also.
Yes.
I definitely want a safe community. I want to walk down the street at midnight in my neighborhood, and I want bad guys locked up. I'm not worried about no crackhead that got some crack in their pocket at midnight that's out there begging for $5. That's not the person that's going to put the gun in my face, okay? I'm worried about the person that's going to put a gun in my face. Right. I'm worried about the person that's going to break in my house, okay? So we will talk about it, and we're going to talk about it maybe next Wednesday. I don't know. We might move it up. But we're going to have a good show either way. Next Wednesday, we're either going to talk about Trayvon, or we're going to talk about cavity searches, current, something that's been caught on video, and it's going to be good. So we're going to talk about one of those two things. So please remember to tune in to Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Continue to help your brothers and sisters in the community like Troy, who are out here trying to make up for their wrongs, trying to be a part of society. Let's help him not return. I mean, I'm so confident that he won't get in trouble anymore, but the system is still looking for him. He's still targeted. I mean, if he stopped tonight, trust me, and an officer looks at his record, he might be illegally searched. We know Troy won't have anything, but why should he be treated that way? So we know how the system is. Let's fight for it to be right, and let's make our local politicians, including our city council people and mayors, to get fair police chiefs and make sure that the police officers work for us just like they work for everybody else, because we're tax-paying citizens and we want the system to be fair equally across the board. All right? So thank you for watching Truth and Justice. Thank you, Troy, for sacrificing your time again, and thank you, Renita, for coming on, looking it up, and for getting Troy as our guest. So thank you, and we will see you next Wednesday on Truth and Justice with Vivian King. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in again. Tonight we have something really good, a hot topic in the news this week. He's been charged with crime. This is a show where I try to educate